Chapter 10. Antonio was asleep, but only just. It was cold, and the inside of his nostrils cooled each time he inhaled. He huddled up, fetal, his body doing its best to retain a little warmth. His joints lay heavy on the floor, and through the long remove of sleep, he could feel his shoulder, his hip, his knees. The sharp shock of the needles shooting up from the apertures in the floor woke him in an instant. They jacked up into the edge of his foot, his calf, his thigh, his buttocks. They poked between his ribs and deep into his shoulder. They were very thin, and there were many of them. He recoiled, wanted to leap up and flit away, but too many needles had bored into too many soft parts. They sunk deep and held him fast as he cried out. The cool spread of serum mapped its way along the side of Antonio's body, insinuating itself into him. With a synchronized click, the needles stopped injecting, and there was a quiet hum as they retracted back into the floor. Antonio could only hyperventilate from the shock and panic. The white light intensified, and his jaw locked as he spasmed. It was hard to say if he heard or felt the crack, but in the next instant, his mind snapped in another direction. He hadn't noticed how cold he'd been until he entered their apartment and knew the warmth there. He hadn't realised how his head buzzed with worries and plans until he saw her working at the kitchen table, tapping something into her eyeline. A picture of concentrated ease. Those light brown features, smooth and fresh. The first inkling of a smile at the corners of her mouth. Nor had he registered the heaviness in his bones, the weight of his eyes, the slump of his posture, until she looked up at him, bright and alert, calm as the night. "Coffee," she said, waving her spoon at the kitchen counter before going back to her eyeline. Antonio winced at the jug of warm blackness. He'd had too much coffee already. His stomach was acidic, and his jaw ached from clenching. He found a mug and poured himself one, took a sip and threw the rest down the sink. "Okay, what you got?" He eased himself into the chair beside her. "I think," she said, "I've found them." "Sorry?" "The negatives." "The offshore negatives?" Obvious question. Perdita didn't answer. The pain screamed through his skull. His spinal cord convulsed. His teeth throbbed, and the serum penetrated deeper. They were scrubbed up, finely dressed, and on their way to dinner with Antonio's colleagues. A red strip of light by the door of the mass car shortened in length as they neared their destination. Not far now. "And this is the Val who's expecting?" asked Perdita. Her cocktail dress left the shoulder open, revealing more of her henimation tattoo as it came off her neck and scooped around her collar. It swayed and coiled in on itself, the pattern slowly shifting in the evening light. "Yes, 6 months. Twins. 1 boy, 1 girl. Antonio hoped his rudimentary wash at the basin had been enough to dispel the day's stress. He lowered his head and took a whiff of his own scent. He suspected it had not. Kids got high-grade enhancements?
Don't know. Haven't asked. I assume so. Be surprised if they hadn't.
Look at her. That dress. The long line of her neck. Where did they find these junior agents? Gene modelling was exquisite these days. Not too much. Just so. Anything major that's off topic? She asked.
I'd rather we didn't get into the whole Radley account mess. More for my sake than hers. Bored to death of the bloody thing, and you know how she goes on about it. And don't bring up Sebastian. If she wants to talk about him, she can bring it up. But otherwise, let it lie.
He's definitely out?
Oh, yes, definitely. Poached by Adalbert Cortazzo himself, no less. There's no going back. Big blow to her pride.
Who else is coming? Antonio counted off on his hand. Rayan, Tequin, Val and Ellery, and I think she's got someone or other from the Ocean, Anselm or something. Never met him. Probably some lawyers. She collects them like butterflies. The needles shivered inside him once again. The mixture was being adjusted, and they tremoured slightly each time the pressure changed. Each vibration was amplified throughout Antonio's nervous system, and a new agony wrenched him from his memories, before the chemical battering ram smashed him back into Val's apartment. A lounge with a city view. Splinter and sliver towers cascading down, opulent drafts of dominion, driving into the earth and reaving the skies apart. The meal was finished, and the guests had decamped to the dimly lit lounge to digest the narco-laced dessert and enjoy its effects. Bodies relaxed. Minds found their edge. A warm sense of euphoria bloomed in their breasts, and good intentions abounded. As ever, Perdita was well liked. There was something about her smile, her round, plum cheeks, the simple enjoyment she took in conversation. What's more, she presented little in way of competition. Her career was gratifyingly impotent, something to do with market research, low-level stuff. She'd never be here if it weren't for Antonio, and somehow that made her easy to talk to. They could explain things to her. You felt as though you could talk and talk, and when someone led her attention from you, a pang of jealousy plucked at you. Something moved at the base of Antonio's skull. Inside, something moved. He twitched as he felt it again. Invaded, helpless. Something boring and wriggling, edging inward. He moaned in disgust. Over the course of the evening, the conversation turned again and again to children and babies. And now, coddled in sweet narcotic compassion, the group worried for Perdita, for her lack of progeny. They just teach you so much about yourself. I've heard it said before. Cliché, I know, but it's so true. Ryan, long arms and legs draped over an easy chair, a hammock of a man. Example, I saw my youngest, Lillian, I don't know, maybe a week ago. The wee dilly says the funniest things. I said, we've got a few minutes. What do you want to do? Of course, I had to switch off her eyeline before she'd look at me, right? The others laughed in knowing amusement. So once she'd stopped crying, I tried again. I said, you want to make something with Papa? And there was a brief glint of interest. You want to make
pancakes, or we could make some decorations. And you know what she said? She said, Papa, I want to make money. I love it. What a kid.
Once the laughter died down, Ryan set his spindly fingers against one another and nodded more seriously to himself.
But I've been thinking about what she said, mulling it over. Kids have their own simple wisdom.
He smiled over at his partner on the sofa.
We've been thinking.
The others sat enthralled. He took his time, playing his audience.
And I think Lillian has a point. Perhaps she ought to start making profit. We've been looking into how to monetize her. There are these cultural anthropologists coming over from Suchi and Sangye. They're studying how children interact with tech to figure out how best to engage them with brands and products. They paid top dollar for a kid from our demo.
He smiled proudly around the room.
And all the profit is going to Lillian.
His gaze settled on Perdita, who was listening with a serene look of appreciation.
You don't expect it, he frowned. But it's true. Kids teach you too.
He looked again at his partner on the couch.
Wouldn't you say, love? I've developed so much since we had Lillian, right?
A man's family is his enemy. They are his downfall. A break in interrogation. Some kind of pain relief in the last mixture. A drowsy oasis of comfort. But when would the pain return? Sedation, tainted with panic. There was a small window in the plain white wall. Antonio crawled over. He saw cars packed tight together, cruising along beside him, just a few feet away. He was on a motorway. They've imprisoned me in a car, he thought. And it's got needles. They'll send me somewhere worse. If this is interrogation, what do they do for punishment? The RMZ, most likely. That cold, immoral place. He had enough consociates there already. Most of the fucking recusancy. And thanks to him, they'd have enough intel to capture more of his brothers and sisters. They would have it worse. Thanks to him. They would have it worse. He was his family's enemy. It was with some relief that Antonio and Perdita tumbled into their mass car and directed it homeward. Antonio called for some temperate tonics, and the mass car slid a few up onto the counter. He reached for them, but Perdita touched his arm. Hold up, can't we take them later? Sober up in a bit. We deserve a break. God knows that dinner was a trial. They'd been on full tilt with this operation for the best part of a year. Antonio was tired, he knew it, and this young agent had turned out to be a real grinder. Smart, too. You had to look after your operatives.
Yeah, sure, kid. You kick back, enjoy yourself.
He went for his tonic, but Perdita stopped him again.
You're joking. Don't you dare leave me in the lurch.
She jabbed his shoulder with a few playful punches. Antonio laughed and put his temperate tonic back. He stepped on something sharp, and Antonio fell to his hands and knees, crying out as he was caught by the needles rising once again from the floor. Howling for mercy, he stared at his punctured hands, his knees and shins burning with 1,000 pinpricks. He clung on, roaring with pained indignation.
as the cool serum coursed back up his arms and legs. The two of them were drunk and squabbling over the music. No, hey, seriously, no. Perdita staggered into him and wagged a finger up at his stubbly chin. In what way is this fun? This is not fun. This is suicide music. It's my turn. I don't care. His eyelids drooped unevenly, and he held her shoulder for balance. Slow is all. Close your eyes. Listen. They swayed together and listened for a moment. No, that's just dark. You are a twisted individual. She found a suitable playlist, the soundtrack to some trendy film. Antonio made his way to the sofa. Okay, yeah, that'll do. I'm tired. Sit down. Perdita snapped a thin strip of balsa and waved it under Antonio's nose. He blinked and woke a little. We'll call it a night soon. She plonked herself next to him and snapped another strip, inhaling its restorative aroma. She sat up a little better. Antonio broke the silence. Oh, I'm so tired, P. Okay, fine. I get it. We've got a lot to do. No, he interrupted. I mean, in general, I've done this for so long, you know? He glimpsed himself in a mirror and smeared his palm down his face. Fucking facial reconfiguration. We could end up on another operation together and never know it was us, right? Fucking weird. Jesus. He looked up at her. Maybe we already work together. I don't know, have we? Have we worked together before? You know we can't... Yeah. Perdita wanted to change the subject. Without thinking, her hand drifted over her animation tattoo. She was in no hurry for identity reassignment either. This would be her first major reconfiguration and, so she'd heard, the hardest. Well, we're here now, aren't we? She raised an eyebrow at her inebriated partner. More or less. Antonio grunted. He flopped his head this way and that, uncertain about something. Then decided. Look, P, I think we've got a problem. She adjusted herself on the sofa. He peered at her, chin down. The whole baby thing, it's a problem. Perdita gave a short laugh. Yeah, can you believe how dull that lot were? My God, some people. No, listen, it's been getting like that at work too. Water cooler talk. It's coming up again and again. We're starting to stick out. Correction, we are sticking out. These guys, you know, they're fucking meticulous. They've plotted children into their career years ago. By the time you're my age, in my position, you have it in hand. 2, 3 little tots to preen and show off and hand back to the nanny when you're done. You know how it is. These guys live for competition. The latest mascar, the single fucking handicap golf score. He raised his drink and took a slap. And the overachieving kids. There just aren't enough ways to measure your dick in this crowd. And our dick is conspicuously small. Antonio instantly regretted the metaphor. But surely people have trouble, conceiving. It must happen. Don't be naive. The treatment is beyond brilliant. If you're not in the club after a few months, it's just a quick trip to the auto doctor and you're straight in. Fact is, most of this bunch take the treatment route anyway. They've got schedules to manage and profit to make. Much easier to plot all of that into an IVF plan. And they can buy their little ones all the upgrades money can buy. Treatment is a no-brainer. Eyebrows are being raised. Why not us? Is there a problem with our relationship? Are we on the rocks? It reflects on me. Is it drink? Closet gay? Fucking mummy issues? Whatever. Something smells off. He leaned into her, jokingly. Even if it's just choosing badly in marriage. Okay, you're saying I need to get pregnant. No. Normally, no. Oh, of course not. It's straightforward. We close the operation down. Not overnight, but with haste. Believe me, we cannot afford to stick out. We are Mr. and Mrs. Average right the way down the line, or we are out of the game. But the offshore negatives, I know. But there you have it. Acquisition will take months. We have days, a week at most. Should have thought of this before deployment. Seems obvious now. Stupid mistake. We're a hot topic. Childless Antonio and Perdita struggling to cope. How long before security catches wind? How hard would it be to check our records? See what action we've taken? The doctor booth, the fertility treatment, the medical records, and whoops, nothing. Where there ought to be something. It flags our names up on a list. Perhaps not the most urgent list in town, but believe me, we pop up on a list. Tick-tock, tick-tock. No, Antonio, not now. The negatives, there's a way. We need to make this work. There's not. I'm sorry. I know how you feel. No, Antonio, there is. I mean it. It's obvious. Go on. I get pregnant. Like you said, no-brainer. Don't be ridiculous. No need to make a big deal out of it. You said it yourself. The treatment is no hassle. It all gets documented on the record. We tell a few close friends who tell a few more. It's congratulations all round. Within a week, we're out of the spotlight. Just step in line with all the baby talk, strollers, birthing techniques, whatever. We just need a few months to acquire the offshore negatives and break clean. Then it's debrief, identity reassignment, and while we're at it, poof, termination. No harm done. I assure you, operation successful. Shandies all round. Fucking hell, P. It'll be fine. Oh, let's talk it over tomorrow. We're in no state right now. Antonio felt ashamed. His plan had gone exactly how he'd wanted. You know I'm right, Antonio. Sure, we've had a few, but you know I'm right. And don't give me any male guilt bullshit. It'll be half yours too. Can't do this on my own. Oh my Lord. He collapsed back onto the sofa and covered his face with his hand. This fucking job, I swear. She nudged him with her elbow. Of course, we could skip the clinic if you'd prefer. The old-fashioned way, Butch. She gave him a mischievous wink. I've heard it does wonders for the spirit. He shook his head. Look, P, you're lovely and everything, but... Joke! Jesus, Antonio, I'm just messing. Come on, where are those tonics? It's time we cleared our heads. We've work to do. When the needles released him, Antonio collapsed, face down and sobbing
in a jumbled heap on the floor, his skin clammy and slick with sweat. Echoes of her perfectly proportioned face danced behind his eyes, and the sound of her voice looped over and over. Wink. We've work to do. Wink. We've work to do. Wink. We've work